Good. Yeah. Okay, good. Now, so what we will see now is that, okay, first, let's just make sure. Uh, okay, and this is my way of checking. I can do this. Nice. So we're delayed. So I can test my audio this way. That way I know now. Yeah, we're okay on YouTube. Because I'll check with the students in the live chat, but I never know who's really there and who isn't. Because I think some students ghost the class as well. So I'm trying to manage that right now. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Oh, I need to see. Oh, that's the issue, right? I can't. Okay. So my workaround for that is because and then I need to get that up going, and I'll show you. Let's. Okay, somebody mute your microphone remotely in the Cosmos. We can hear you, which is good. Okay, so then now this I need to just and then I have to. Okay, so this is this has to be put in here, and the reason is, and then I have the HDMI cables. I'm storing them in there. Okay. Yes, the cables are in the underneath the podium. Okay, and then because they were being taken. So I told Elgin I'd store them in the podium along with the pens because they've been stolen. So, or at least something, but we're missing cables. So, okay, here we go. So we'll put that here. Okay, and we'll put that here because I'm not using. And then what that does is, okay, and we'll turn that on, right? I got to get that up. Good. Okay, now we got to get that pushed up onto the board, and then okay, let's see. Okay, we're almost there, and then I'm going to be getting the panels set up. So nice. Whoops. Whoops. So it will be here. Good. Okay, and then finally, let me just get that because this is the important panel over here. I was having issues with that, but Let's see, it should come up, but that's been fixed. Control-Alt-Delete. So then I come in with the keyboard is working better today. And then that I had to get the password changed. Hopefully that's going to work today. Excellent. Okay, I think we're just about ready, but I think from a technical standpoint, Andrew, I can manage the rest. Yeah, thanks a lot, okay? Yeah, and that is something, systemic okay, great, okay, thanks a lot. Good, okay, so let's just give me a few more minutes, guys, and then we will rock and roll here. Let me just go to DC Connect where I have a really good video that I want to just run. And if I get dinged again by YouTube today in terms of copyright, then I can switch over to Vimeo, because that happened on Wednesday. And then, okay, DC Connect. So let's go to our folder for class 13. And, okay, that's the wrong one. Okay, is it that one? Yeah, good. Okay, so let's see if that's going to take the password that is the new password, but sometimes it doesn't work over here. So yeah, nice. Okay, so things are, oh, no. Okay, so that's an error. Yeah, okay, so it won't accept that password even though it accepted it. So the workaround for that will be that instead of going to that, I'll go to YouTube Premium. Why that is not working on that platform, but the other platform is, we'll deal with that later. But always a workaround, always ready to pivot. Now we've got a sign in there. It's not defaulting to that. Okay, so, okay, now the keyboard doesn't want to work. Okay, okay, so let's not, okay, tech stress. Here we go. Tech stress really, oh no, tech stress is okay. Tech stress, because tech wants to do what it wants to do. And the human, okay, so tech, go ahead, do what I'm telling you to do. That's a good tech. The tech is a nice little pet. Do what the human wants. We'll block that. And then we're going to go to the evolution of life one, which was a nice by what's his name? I forget his name. Will it come up on here? Yeah, nice. Okay, so I'm going to loop that. I'm going to loop that on that, right? And I'll let the audio run. Let's get rid of this. No, use continuous lawn. Let that run, and we're going to loop that in the background for a little bit. Great. Oh, so we get Russian in the, forget the captions. So somebody Russian must have done this, but it's very good. Okay, and it just gives us a little reminder of how far we've come. Excellent. Okay, now we're getting really close to launch. And I want to check whether, nice. So I will push that out. But let's see if, hello, Cosmos Gurnham, can you hear me? Just put a yes in the live chat if you can. Excellent, thank you. So that's working. That's working. What we want finally is the cameras have been repositioned. I've got somebody has played with that. Okay, so I just have to reset that view because we're off there. So I had a preset, but we'll do this. Okay, we'll do the preset here. Let me just double check if that is, no, don't do that. Exactly. You just touch the wrong, do this, do that. Exactly. That will tell you. And on YouTube, it looks good. YouTube, it looks really good. Okay, good. Except we need to zoom in a little bit. And that way, and the couches have also been moved. Interesting. Okay. Who cares? We'll preset, save preset there. What about the second preset? Okay, well, we can play with that later. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, so now finally, we have to bring in, and I have to bring in Chrome, and I have to rebuild Chrome, but I can do that. I'm only going to do one thing with that. Otherwise, it's just going to be way too much tech. So I have to bring back I have to reload the PowerPoint here. I'm almost there. I go in here. I pull this from here. I've got a PDF of it, but which PDF is it? Okay, I know I did that new PDF. Did I load it in here? Yes, I did. That's it. That's it. Oh, don't do that. Don't do that, tech. Why were you doing that 15 minutes ago and now you don't want to do it? Okay, but I have a workaround if you want to be really stubborn about this. Okay, I do have a workaround, but this should go into this right here, just like it did this morning. No. Okay, so you don't want to do that. Okay, so the workaround will be that I'll have to do it this way. So let's open. You can do it. You can do it. Okay, so the students see too much information. No, that's the wrong one. Who cares? There's too much that goes wrong. So we're going to just do it this way. And if I can actually do it this way, almost there, I had it. Oh, okay. So we have to go back to here. We're going to pull it from here. And we'll pull the PowerPoint from here. It won't be exactly the PowerPoint that I had, but it'll be good enough. We'll have the images. Yes, we'll have the images. We'll do it that way. Forget about Chrome. We're going to only do PowerPoint. We'll bring back Toria. Okay, close that window, bring back Toria, and yeah, it's in Safari. There it is. Okay, now bring back PowerPoint. Bring back PowerPoint. We'll put that in dock so I can throw that up here. Then we can bring that in here. Oh, we're so close. And I've worked around it. I've worked around it, and I've worked around it, and I've worked around it. And then how are we doing on YouTube? Yeah, we're okay on YouTube. Jesus. This place. Oh, fuck. People don't know. If I can just say to all of you, people don't know at the college what I've done in this room. Everybody thinks it's amazing, but I get no support. And what I do is what you just saw is I'm putting together a television show here on my own with tech that is always breaking down and virtually no support. But let me just get that off my chest and get focused because I'm here and I do this for all of you guys because I just love to help you figure out how to live in a very strange world right now. So I think we're good. I think we're good. Now, just to double check. Oh, thanks, Kevin, for helping on the chat. Shamim, just one more time. Everything good? You can hear me clearly? Just go yes in the chat, and then I know everything is working. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to just lower this, and I'll let this. No, you can leave the lights on. We are now ready to take off, and I'll just take a little drink and and get my book. What I need are assistants. I used to run a production company with friends, and anyways, we're building something great for humanity. I know we are. And ultimately, for the next generation to understand the human story. So, welcome everyone to Short History of the World for our penultimate or second last class of the semester. And it's great to see so many students in person right now. For those of you in the cosmos, you see a few on the couches, but there are quite a few behind the couches right now. And gradually we'll bring people in for our good discussion. I have some encouraging news for you today in terms of the content. It's going to be pretty good in terms of the story. War, at least the big wars, are done. The Second World and the First World Wars. And I'm going to be looking at an 80-year period, essentially, from 1945, which was the end of the Second World War, and you saw how that ended last week, up until the present. So I'm essentially going to, in the next half an hour to 40 minutes, I'm going to try and deliver a fairly fast blast through these 80 years. It's extremely selective. I'm the storyteller here, the historian. I've chosen this series of events through these last 80 years, just as I've been doing for the last 13 weeks, to help you to understand in a very introductory way what is the shared human story on planet Earth. And so, if you were a little bit disturbed by some of the content last week, and it was quite dark at times, and it could have been even worse when we talk about genocide and omnicide as the legacies of the two, particularly the Second World War, it's going to be a different class today. But these last 80 years, in terms of the end of the 20th century, coming into this third millennium that we're in, the 2000s, the transition from the 20th century into the 21st, the transition from the 1900s into the 2000s is a very significant moment in human history. And it's not just about numbers. We do call some of those right now the millennials, the generation of young people who are coming of age in this new millennium. And so I think that you will find that in today's lecture, we're going to be ending with some hope and a real sign of human progress in spite of the darkest and most difficult and disturbing aspects of our story, which you saw on pretty stark display last week with the way that we have combined modern technology and social and cultural ignorance into a toxic brew that can then culminate in genocide, and then even worse, in omnicide. So great, we have everything working, and what I'd like to do today is deliver this 80-year blast through these important events. And then, if we can, to bring everybody into the nucleus here as much as possible and pass the mic around to all the students who are sitting in this area to have a discussion and interact about this big idea that has been there right from the beginning, and you're looking at it now in a very visual way, and it's called evolution. There is no greater force in the story that we have explored this semester than the idea of change on planet Earth. And change is generally expressed in this large idea of evolution. So I'm just showing you on the big board right now, silently, for the moment, a young video maker's um, illustration with some good data that just gives you a sense of a little bit of the evolutionary story that that we saw early on in the semester. But as this is looped again, and you see this, can I just remind you as we move forwards into the third millennium, and maybe we are entering a period in history in which there is a new mind, a new type of human being emerging, and that is that we are connected. We have grown out of what you are now seeing on this big board. We are animals. We are the most developed animals on this planet. Our religions, our creation myths have told us stories of how we got here and why we are here. Science is the story and the narrative that we follow in order to be a modern human being ready for the future. Science has helped us to understand that there is another story here that we humans are beginning to understand more. Civilized, developed, modern human being, the human being that has created the planet-wide technological civilization in which we live, that allows us to travel and communicate the way that we do, that is allowing us to leave the planet and go to other parts of the solar system, essentially has very little to do with religion. But religion is spiritually and morally important in our story. But in terms of what you're looking at right now, religion can't help you to understand this. That is a creature, an animal that has been here. It has something called deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA in it. It has genes. It has a genome. So do we. And we have learned that we are just a different form of that. But what makes us different and what is taking us into the future is our brains. It's your brain. So, what you're about to see in these 80 years after the Second World War is maybe a sign that the human brain and what we can think of and imagine is capable of solving some very big problems. So let me just take you, good. So I've got my PowerPoint here. This is how it's going to happen. First, could you all, before we just begin, I'm just trying to follow our structure, could you all just put your name so we know that you're on board and we don't forget, and we'll have that right up here, okay? And I'll just take a moment while I get ready to blast through these 80 years. And for all of you, oh, yeah, sorry. Thanks, everybody. Okay, good. Good, Olive. And for all of you in the cosmos right now, could you please put your full names? Thanks, Shamim and everyone else. And we will start. I just need one more little tool, and that's called a pencil, which is another great human invention. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Kendra, terrific to see you in the live chat. So you're with us live today. That's great. And Kendra, if there's anything you'd like to talk to me about afterwards, we can always continue online after the class. Okay. I have a meeting at 2 o'clock with the student as well. But if you would like, we can also have a quick chat too. Okay. So let's see what else. Great. We've got the Cosmos going. We've got the onboard going. And so I'll continue the beginning of the lecture while people are are doing this. But for everybody online, if you want to see your peers right now here, then I will just go to the second camera, and let's see. You're going to see the camera fly over there, and there's Kevin's back, uh, and you can see in the corner. Hey, Kevin. Good. I'm doing my play-by-play. This is Hockey Night in Canada now, or the Blue Jays. Yeah, there's Kayla Dudley, and there's Katie Leo. Anyway, she's getting a little carried away with play-by-play. Play-by-play. Good. Now, you're seeing a big two words behind me called "What Now?" And I think you saw this at the end of last week's class. Maybe you didn't. Do you remember this? These two words, "What now?" Thank you, Olive. Can always count on Olive, who's plugged in. So the idea was, after all of that misery and suffering and anguish that was presented as a result of two world wars in the 20th century, in which if you combine the body count for both world wars, and you combine, the numbers of people whose lives were destroyed and injured from it, then you throw in all the people in Japan and Hiroshima and Nagasaki who were blasted by the atomic bombs, and the people who survived and who were victims of a nuclear blast, but had their bodies completely disfigured. I mean, if you look at we're talking hundreds of millions of human beings, greater than any event. Whether you look at the conquest and when the Europeans came over and virtually exterminated the indigenous peoples, whether you look at other wars in history as well, nothing comes close. So then the question became, after this, after there was peace in 1945, after the atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki effectively forced Japan into surrender, in which the God King of Japan, the Emperor, finally surrendered. Hitler was dead, the Nazis were gone, soon they would stand trial in Nuremberg. What now? What do we do? How do we go forwards? How do human beings go forwards after these two world wars? Are we just going to create another series of problems for humanity that will end in the same sort of catastrophe in the decades ahead? Are we just going to be in an endless cycle in which history repeats itself? And will we, professors who teach history, be faced with students again and again writing papers with lines like, "History repeats itself," as if this is some sort of trope or cliche in which you have all been educated on in your schools, and that's all you remember about history, which is history repeats itself? Well, I have news for you. It doesn't. What repeats itself are humans making the same old mistakes. But there's nothing inevitable about the historical process in which history is just an endless series of cycles that go on repeating themselves. Humans can actually progress. And that's going to come as sort of news to the pessimists among you, those who are convinced, as you look ahead into the future, that it's all just going to happen again. I don't need to ask any of you if you have that view baked into you from your education in previous classes in which you believe it's all going to happen again. The future is dark and grim and ugly, and we are destroying ourselves. Good. You're not entirely wrong, but there is another story here, a better one. And that's what I'm going to present to you in the next 20 or 30 minutes to help you to understand another perspective that should give you some hope. First, at the end of the war, the United Nations was formed. there had been another international organization called the League of Nations that had been created after the First World War, and it failed. But then that was revived again at the end of the Second World War. And this time, what was given was a universal declaration of human rights. This had never been given to anybody anywhere. It wasn't in the American Constitution that led to the formation of the United States. It wasn't in the French Constitution that came after the French Revolution. It wasn't in any other declaration of democratic governance. But now we had the United Nations saying, given the extent of this catastrophe, the Second World War, given what we saw, something has to change. So we got this. Now let's talk about this for a moment. Article 1, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, came after the Second World War. Not any other war produced this. Now we have a universal declaration that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Let me just stop this for a sec so you're not too distracted. I meant to, hold on. Just think about these words, and I will just freeze this on this nice giant sloth. Oh, well, we come back to him. You know, there were giant sloths once upon a time in North America, right here. We killed them, called the megafauna extinction. We killed off all the large animals. But anyways, that's another part of the story I can't get into. You may think today in 2026, big deal. We take all of this for granted now. And you may think, well, what's the United Nations? It's a weak organization now, and it seems to have been run roughshod by the United States and by China and by Russia and by others who think the United Nations really doesn't have any more power anymore. Well, in 1945, it was a big deal. And as a matter of fact, Canada had a significant role to play in the creation of this declaration. It was a Canadian diplomat, John Humphrey, who helped us to understand this. Sorry, I meant to, there we go, stop. Do you find that distracting if it's looped like that a little bit? Yeah, I meant to do that, but I forgot. Now we're done. So Canada was very involved in this. And as a matter of fact, we had a prime minister at the time, Lester B. Pearson, who later came into power during this period, who became so important as a peacemaker in the world that he actually was put on the cover of Time magazine and would be nominated for a Nobel Prize for Peace. As a matter of fact, he won the Nobel Prize for Peace at that time for his efforts in peacemaking. So what we see is Canada beginning to emerge now as a diverse and multicultural and forward-looking nation that is receiving credit for a kind of being a middle power in the world to come in and solve difficult conflicts through our leadership. We also saw emerge in the world some other figures that are very important. For example, Mahatma Gandhi, the spiritual leader in India, a Hindu, he did something remarkable in this period at the end of the Second World War. India had not been deeply involved in the Second World War, but it certainly was involved. But it had a bigger problem. It was a very divided nation between the Hindu and the Muslim. And Mahatma Gandhi emerged, and he not only said that we now are going to free ourselves from the colonial oppression of the British government here. He's going to do in a way, but in a much more important way, what Bartolomé Las Casas had done when he confronted the colonialism of Europe in the Americas. First, through his bravery, he's going to form, through his humble presence, a movement that will lead to the British leaving India so that India could become its own independent nation. And once it became that, it then had a problem on its hands. And unfortunately, in spite of Mahatma Gandhi's efforts to unite the Hindu and the Muslim into one nation, he was assassinated by a Muslim fanatic. In cold blood, in broad daylight, at an event, out of a crowd, a Hindu fanatic came up, pointed a gun at Mahatma Gandhi right in his chest, and shot him and killed him. And as a result, the dream for India of a united nation of Muslim and Hindu together was gone. And now it would have to be Hindu in India and Muslim in Pakistan. And Pakistan was created. And all the Muslims go there and all the Hindus go here. And we will create a divided entity. I still think that this is a hopeful story. In spite of the fact that he was assassinated by a fanatic, Abraham Lincoln, the American president who won the Civil War and helped to end slavery and bring the United States out of that war, he too was assassinated by a fanatic. But these individuals, more of them, are starting to emerge now. The ones who are the uniters, not the dividers. The ones who do not want to repeat the grotesque violence and devastation of the Second World War. They don't want that, nor do you. We also saw, as a result of this kind of newer mind beginning to form, this broader, more open mind, a great determination to create with our human intelligence new forms of technology. There was a remarkable conference that was held at Dartmouth College in the United States in 1956. And what we saw there was the world's leading computer scientists came together and they launched artificial intelligence. Now, you may think, because a lot of how we think today in this world is so divorced from history. If your world is limited to what you see on social media and the present moment, you will think that history is basically just, the beginning of this century and maybe the Second World War, and that's the extent of it. And you might think artificial intelligence is really new. It's not. It started a long time ago, but there's an acceleration of it now. Remember what Alfred North Whitehead said, the world dreams of things to come and then in due season arouses itself to their realization. Humans dream, they have big minds, they have big imaginations. And they dream of things that are better for humanity. And then, the rest of humanity sort of has to catch up because we are a bit slow sometimes to be brave enough to open ourselves to newer, better things. It's easier to default to the way things always have been done. It's harder to put your toe into a new ocean and not only just put your toe in it, but step in it and walk out into the water and start swimming to another island because you're not afraid. Most of humans, most of us are afraid, but these men weren't. As a matter of fact, after the Second World War, there had been a lot of other experimenting going on in technology. It wasn't just these computer scientists who came together to begin to think of ways that technology could be used to improve humanity. But there is a great legacy of the Second World War that probably you are all familiar with because you've all seen the movie, The Imitation Game. How many of you have seen the movie The Imitation Game? About Alan Turing. Well, let me just explain something that you need to be aware of quickly. Fascism was not just defeated because we bombed the hell out of Germany and eventually bombed Berlin and forced Hitler into a bunker where he had to kill himself because he knew the game was up. The Allies, and the British in particular, they cracked the Nazi code of communication. It's called the Enigma Project. There was a British, brilliant young computer scientist named Alan Turing who figured out, using the first computer, how to understand what Hitler and all his senior command were communicating to each other by cracking their codes. Alan Turing did that. And he is profiled in this wonderful movie called The Imitation Game, where you will see that out of the World War, something positive really happened. There were some very brilliant scientists at work in the Second World War who helped us to win. They weren't just the ones who built the atomic bomb. Robert Oppenheimer and others who then went to the Manhattan Project in the New Mexican desert. And, well, you can see the movie about that too. It's called Oppenheimer. Or you can read the book that I can show you that won the Pulitzer Prize. It's an amazing read about Robert Oppenheimer. But Alan Turing and all these other computer scientists who came out of the Second World War and were thinking of ways to improve humanity with technology, they are among the new minds, the new scientific and engineering minds that are going to open our world up and improve our world with technology. To say something like that in front of all of you, somehow to me, seems strange. I'm not sure how many of you are dystopian in your thinking about technology. Probably a lot, judging by what you write and what you say to me. Here am I, almost 63-year-old professor standing in front of you who has been learning over the last 15 to 20 years how to use technology well. And I'm supposed to be, because I'm older, a kind of a Luddite, like your parents or your grandparents. You know, you're teaching them how to use tech and they don't really know how to use it, and you're the smart ones and you embrace tech. Well, in fact, I'm learning that a lot of you don't like tech that much. And I'm the one standing in front of you now saying, guys, tech, if it's used well, can open up our future and lift our spirits and connect us more and make us more educated and enter us, humanity, into a golden age of learning. This has been said by more than other older people. But I feel odd saying that because I know right now, with the way that we are approaching ChatGPT and the abuse of technology among many students right now in writing papers and doing videos and so many other things, that there is such a dark view of technology. I don't subscribe to that. Well, let me show you another remarkable figure who emerges in this period. It gives me hope for the human being to begin to use technology or begin to open themselves up to more courageous acts of free thinking. Do you know who this person is? He is considered by many to have saved us from a third world war. Do any of you know the name of Vasily Arkhipov? You ever heard of the name? Ooh, I have to tell you about this. who would be able to do the notes quickly? Could someone go over and, oh, Nuso, excellent. Okay, could you go ahead? Thank you. And I'm remembering his name. Could you just make another slide and just write down the person who prevented a third world war? The person who prevented a third world war. And I'm looking over at the ones who usually seem to raise their hand knowing a few things, but I didn't see Kevin's hand. I didn't see Roxalana. And Vasily Arkhipov? Do you know who he is? Did I mention him already? I don't think I have, but maybe you thought I did, and maybe you knew it already, and you thought I said it, but really you knew it. But maybe you're transferring your knowledge to me. Well, anyways, do you remember what he did? Okay, well, hold on a second. Let's check and see what. No, looking at your device. Okay, the only device that matters right now is your brain. So I'm going to let Kevin speak because he didn't look to his device for this information. Okay, but fair enough. I mean, you find good information, Olive. No question. But so what did you do?
I'm not hearing myself through.
Okay, hold on. Let's make sure. Go ahead now.
Test. Yeah, that sounds better.
And I'll just knock it like this. And yeah, good. Okay, and everybody can hear him. So Kevin, please go ahead. Vasily Arkhipov.
My memory, which might be inaccurate, of Vasily Arkhipov is there have been lots of stories of incidents like this, but there's at least one of them that's definitely true, and this is it, or I assume this is it.
Yes, it's true.
The Russians or the Soviets had lots of sensor arrays to try to detect incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles. And the Americans had their own sensors. And at some point, the sensors were saying to the Russians, the Soviets, there's an incoming volley of missiles. You have to react right now. You have to launch your missiles, or else you're going to get destroyed, and you're not going to be able to launch missiles. And the Americans are going to survive, but the Soviets aren't. And this guy Vasily Arkhipov said, "I don't believe it. Our sensors must be malfunctioning. It's not really happening." So he didn't press the button, and then they did more research, or they did more searching, and they found out, yeah, in fact, the sensors were malfunctioning, and he made a good call.
Okay, let me fill in. You're on the right track. That's excellent, Kevin. Thanks. And there's a real technical decision he made, but let me fill this out for you in terms of the story, okay? A little bit more. After the Second World War, the Soviet Union and the United States, which had early on been allies in their defeat of fascism, but then Joseph Stalin, who was the Soviet leader, very much a Hitlerian kind of figure, a God King figure, if you will, brutal dictator, a man of steel. He liked to call himself a man of steel. All these guys do, men of steel. There's no such thing. Human beings are not made of steel, but this is, and a lot of people have come to believe this nonsense. But anyways, the Soviet Union then became adversaries at the end of the Second World War, and a new Cold War developed between the Soviet Union, the Soviet Empire, and the United States and its allies over who would have the most nuclear weapons. It was a conflict between communism and capitalism, if you will, or communism and democracy. The West and the East. The world was split into those powers. In 1962, there was a crisis. It's called the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States, at the time, the president was JFK, John Kennedy, who would be assassinated in 2 years. His intelligence discovered that Nikita Khrushchev, the leader at that time in the Soviet Union, had placed nuclear warheads in Cuba. Cuba was an ally of the Soviet Union, and this was discovered by American intelligence. And the world was suddenly frozen in terror because it looked like the Third World War was about to erupt. Soviet missiles just south in Cuba, facing all of the American continent, Canada, United States, Mexico, South America, I mean, all of that. And at that point, there was a 2-week period, a terrifying 2-week period for the world. It's often called 13 days, in which some very intense diplomacy went on between the Americans and the Soviets, in particular, John Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev. And by no means was it certain that there would be no war. And it did seem like there would be a nuclear war, to the extent that your grandparents would remember being in elementary school and having training exercises done. You know, okay, children, here come the nuclear warhead from Cuba. Go under your desk now and cover your head. Like, that's going to help you a lot after what we saw in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But anyways, we humans, our governments, we will do, we'll believe anything if we want to be safe. But I mean, that's really going to help you if it's coming. Anyways, there was a submarine fleet from the Soviet Union that had moved across the Atlantic Ocean and was around Cuba, supporting the nuclear missiles in Cuba. And those submarines had nuclear torpedoes on them. This individual was a second in command on one of those submarines. There were 4 of them. He was advised by Moscow that if you are threatened and you feel that you are endangered by the detection, they're devices that are dropped in by the Americans and others to see what's underwater and to force the submarines to the surface. There's a name for them. I forget the name. Depth charges. Thank you. Depth charges are being launched by Americans to force these submarines up, but they won't come up. Vasily Arkhipov and 2 of his commanders had been told specifically that if you are threatened like this, fire away, boys. Start firing your torpedoes. The war begins. He defied the order. Think of this. Second in command. He has a commanding officer at that time. 3 of them all have to agree. He and the commanding officer and 1 other. They're commanding 4 submarines. They all have to agree, all 3 of them, before they can launch the torpedo. And he is the one who disagrees. This, if anything, should give you again hope in the human being for having his own moral conscience, for having the bravery, in the same way that we might say Abraham did way back when he had a free moral conscience, and he said, I do not want to live in a city-state that is governed by a corrupt God king. I will go and form a new world. I have my own moral conscience. Thank you very much. I'm not scared of the leaders. I know what's right and wrong. I will defy that. Well, he was considered a great traitor. After Nikita Khrushchev and John Kennedy came to an agreement in which Khrushchev would withdraw the nuclear warheads from Cuba and the Americans would withdraw their nuclear weapons from Turkey that were facing the Soviet Union, the submarines went home. And Vasily Arkhipov became a persona non grata in Soviet Union. He was hardly a hero. He wasn't executed, but he was considered a coward. Now he's considered a hero. A couple of hundred, all of we're talking about, if he had said yes, the nuclear torpedoes would have started firing nuclear weapons at the Americas. and nuclear war would have broken out. Well, this is good. Let's hear this for a second. Good information. Let's hear. You're saying a nuclear torpedo would not actually launch
I'm not
a
saying
larger nuclear conflict.
because you're stating a nuclear torpedo, which is an anti-ship device. You're not stating a nuclear missile. Those are two extremely different devices. So a nuclear torpedo could destroy a water-based
yeah,
city,
yeah.
but it would not be able to do as much damage as the water would suppress much of the surrounding issue. If it's a missile launch coming out of the water and going into land, that would be the device that would be doing the major damage into a land-based.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. You're probably not wrong. I'm not sure. I think you're right, but I'd have to really check. But you're getting caught up in technical details.
I'm sorry.
Critical thing. The critical problem is if one country starts launching any weapon that has a nuclear capability on it, what's the other country going to do? They're going to launch back, and it's just going to escalate until we start to see larger bombs, larger nuclear weapons being dropped. So the escalation never started because Vasily Arkhipov said, I won't fire anything.
He saved countless lives.
Well, think about it. Think about what's happening, okay? But let me move on quickly, but I might have to stop because I really want you guys to have a chance to talk. So there were other individuals who began to emerge in this period after the Second World War in which we can say they were heroic in alerting us to the dangers of the world that had led to the world wars, or alerting us to other dangers that we had to think about in order for humanity to prosper. One of them was Rachel Carson. She is the mother or the beginning visionary of the environmental movement. We would never have an awareness of climate change today. We would never have an ecological movement without Rachel Carson's book in the 1960s called Silent Spring, which is a very, very important work. She was just a journalist, and she started to look at the amount of chemicals in fertilizers and pesticides and other things that we were using to grow our food. And essentially, she was looking at the effect of plastics. She was looking at the widespread use of chemicals in the new products that we were creating from fossil fuels and how this was starting to destroy farmland. It was starting to lead to health effects in human beings. And as a result, we started to have an environmental movement in the 1960s. We would eventually see Greenpeace, a Canadian organization, begin that became a great force in confronting environmental development as well as the buildup of nuclear weapons by countries. Rachel Carson said to us, only within the moment of time represented by the present century, that is the 20th century, has one species, man, acquired significant power to alter the nature of this world. This is a common thought now in 2026. We are very aware of our impact on the environment. Of course, climate change is the tip of the iceberg, but there are many other areas that we can say, look at what humans are doing to the natural order of things. For example, look at what humans are doing in medical science now with prosthetics and the extension of life and artificial. She was alerting us to this idea that has now become commonplace, which is we're in a new age called the human age, the Anthropocene, not the Holocene. And it's humans who are driving change on the planet, not the gods. Martin Luther King Jr., another visionary as well, whom you all know, and I will only use one line from him, but I have to say this with caution. Virtually everybody likes to quote Martin Luther King Jr. in the 1960s as being the great leader of human rights. And he was, no question. However, may I just say, for the sake of the record, we've been learning more and more about his plagiarism and the fact that he didn't actually write all the speeches that he wrote. What's that? Well, let's hold on a second. Maybe it is. I've never. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and let's check because Kayla is now onto this, and I'd like to check. This is a very important line. He said in the late 1960s, before he was assassinated, gunned down as well. He, of course, led the civil rights movement through the 1960s that began to advance the cause of Black Americans. Like, it certainly needed it. Had we not already had slavery ended and the Civil War, and then there were so many other problems that led to the fact that even though slavery ended, there were still gross civil rights violations going on. And so another movement began in the 1960s because Black Americans couldn't vote, and they couldn't even ride the same buses and go to the same beaches. And so even though there had been the end of slavery, there had still been so much more work that had to be done. And as you know, everybody knows, Martin Luther King Jr. stood up in Washington. I have a dream and blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have to fill in the blanks. You all know that. But he did say something very profound. And I'd like to find out if Kayla is right. Let's check, because this would be wonderful if a student is now pointing something out. He said that we are now living in a time when we can live together as brothers or perish together as fools. Now, I need to stop first and ask you, do you know what that means? And second, we're going to paddle down a creek together for a moment with Kayla's insight to see if Martin Luther King just grabbed this line from the Bible and made it his own. Because it has been said he did like to cut and paste a little bit, okay? So hold on a second. First, why is this line so important at this point in the story that I'm telling right now? What is Martin Luther King Jr. identifying about humanity that now has changed irreversibly? What is so profound about this? Okay, I want you to think about this for a moment. Anybody in the cosmos? And then we're going to find out if this is really what he said or whether he just grabbed it from Genesis or Leviticus or I don't know, wherever. Think about what I've just been talking about. That we're seeing a new kind of mindset. We're seeing braver people, people who are willing to stand for the sake of social betterment. They don't want another war. In fact, they don't even want war. But why would he say this? Who is he talking about? What is he talking about? Prince, I know you're with us, but let's just see. I'm not going to ask you to come in to this, but I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable by asking a student on the edge here, and I'm pulling you into the class. What does he mean? What's that? Yeah. We can live together as brothers or perish together as fools. He said this in the late 1960s, before he was killed in 1968, I think it was. He was shot in a little motel. Guy came and just shot him. And John Kennedy had been killed. His brother, Robert Kennedy, had been killed. Lots of assassinations had been going on. But what might he mean?
I believe that means like he was
And why would we all perish together?
Because we would all perish because if everyone's not together, they're always like in conflict.
Keep going. I've told you something about the destructive capacity of humankind now. It's called omnicide. So when he says we will perish together, what is he referring to?
Like the new technology, maybe
Keep going.
like
You got it?
like the invention of new technology.
You got it. Exactly. He's basically saying war now will mean the destruction of everything, practically. So we would be fools. Fools in the way we never have been fools, because now the destructive power of war, and have we not seen this on display in 2026 with the wars going on, whether it is in Gaza and Israel, Ukraine and Russia? Have you noticed how easy it is to kill so many people so quickly? That's a legacy of the Second World War and the First World War. It's called the mechanization of war. So he's basically saying, if we can't live together and we're just going to fight more, we're all going to go. Pretty profound. Well, let me stop. And I think for the moment, because there's so much I want to say, but so little time to say it, I want to come to Kayla and find out exactly where this line comes from. And then I may just do the rest as we discuss. And then I want to show you a really important video that's going to change your mind about the last 250 years or so. A terrific piece of statistics gathering from a very important thinker called Hans Rosling in Sweden, who hosted a television show called The Joy of Statistics in England. And he has some figures for us about the world and how it has changed since 1800. It's going to change your mind, I think. But first, Kayla, does this exact line come from the Bible? Where exactly? Okay. These exact words? Well, I don't know what to say. I have to stop and think for a moment. Nuso, what should I say? We might be learning, but I don't want to say this is true because I don't know yet. And I'm not even 100% certain that this line that comes from my notes isn't followed by Martin Luther King Jr. saying, or before prefacing it by saying, from the scriptures comes this line, we can live together. I think he didn't do that. And what he did do is he stood and he spoke and he said these words as if he made those words up. But I'm not sure. Well, would it matter to you, Kevin, if a really important person in history whom we rely on to give us hope about humanity stole the words from somewhere else and made them sound like his own? Not if you are a person of that set. No, this is good. Can you just put down in the notes right now, and then we'll move on, because it's a good question. Did MLK Jr. actually write these words? What a world we live in now. I'm standing in front of you, but this is the world we live in now. 3/4 of the time in the course of the day, I have no idea what's true and what isn't. When I read students' papers, I'm scratching my head now going, did this student steal this from somewhere? Did they cut and paste this from somewhere? Why is Turnitin not telling me everything? It's a very, very difficult world, and we have to be so smart now in understanding where's the truth. So smart. But I'm an optimist. I am. I believe in the better angels of our nature, and I believe that Martin Luther King did not steal those words from the scriptures and make them sound like Martin Luther King said them. But we shall see. Yes. Does it matter? Yes. It's sort of what Kevin is saying in a way, but if you're saying something important, and particularly if you're speaking in front of a large number of people or not, but those people look to you for integrity, it's very important that you identify your sources. You don't want to give any illusion that somehow you are not to be trusted. A trusted source is what we all look for. Every one of us today probably has a dilemma when they get information. What source can I trust? I mean, I see people on the subway now, older people, they're just scrolling through TikTok. And that's how they're spending their time. It used to be they'd be reading something. And what are they looking at? Videos of a guy's urinating on a tree and a woman's walking by, or there's a woman half dressed, and yeah, it's funny. But after a while, you start to wonder, are people getting more stupid? Yes. Oh, give him the thanks, Prince. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like TikTok too is like informative and like it actually shows. It depends on how you use it. It can actually teach you how to do things that like you've
Sure,
never
sure.
done before.
Yes.
So in that aspect, I don't really. I feel like it depends on how people use it.
It's how
my
you use
concept.
it. I agree. So I mean, I'm just saying this to sort of provoke you a little bit, but let's move on and let's stop for a second. And let me just say that one more thing, and then we will have a little discussion, and then I'll show you the video. There's a remarkable year, 1989. We might say it's as dramatic as 1945 in being a dividing line between the world that was and the world that could be. In 1989, we saw some remarkable things take place, all in this one year. First, in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, a figure as brave as any, who had fought against the South African apartheid regime, which was a regime set up by a white minority to violently suppress the black majority. And he led the resistance. And he was put in jail for that. He spent 26 or 27 years in prison for fighting as a black man against the white government to bring change, equality, biracial government, black and white living together. And he was physically and in many other ways attacked and kept in incarceration in very difficult conditions, but he never gave up. And eventually, remarkably, through international pressure, that included, in a small way, a song. But this was the kind of thing that was happening. You could Google this anytime. Free Nelson Mandela. You might have heard that song, Free Nelson Mandela. It played all over the world. It was just a sign of many people in the world, many countries and many individuals were on his side. So eventually the white government had to concede defeat. And it decided to end apartheid, the system of white power, and release Nelson Mandela from prison. And lo and behold, he became the first president of a new multiracial South Africa. And you know what he did that's remarkable too? He had a chance to do what others have done in his position, to seek revenge. Whoops. To seek, let me stop for a second. He could have taken all the land owned by white farmers and removed them violently and given it all to the black people who felt that the land had been stolen from them. He didn't. He led a period of reconciliation. South Africa today is certainly troubled and struggles, but that was a remarkable change. We saw another change take place in a place called Burma, or now Myanmar, where a woman who had stood up against the military government there would eventually be released from house arrest, and she would also come to power, but then she would be put back in house arrest, where she is today. So it's not such a great story in Myanmar, but how about in Rome? This is significant. The Pope, the Roman Catholic Pope, the leader of the largest Christian denomination in the world, said to the chief rabbi of Rome, why don't you come down to the center of Rome and let us shake hands for all the world to see? We now are prepared to say, though we've believed this, but we're now prepared to say to the whole world, the Christian and the Jew are not enemies. The Pope was prepared to say, you, the Jew, the rabbi, you didn't kill Jesus. There are other factors here that we're prepared to look at. We are prepared to bury the hatchet, if you will, and go forwards because we are really brothers. We come from the same Abrahamic patriarch. And then how about in the European world, the collapse of the Soviet Union? East Germany and West Germany, they've been separated by a wall. The wall came down and all the East Germans piled across into West Germany, and Germany became a united nation ruled more or less by democratic ideas. So we had all these events taking place in 1989 that should give us all hope that we can solve our deep problems if we wish, if we have the courage to. It's there because we don't want more terrible wars. Yes, Kayla. So he didn't take the exact words and make them. So he Okay, well, would you send it to me if you do exactly? Because I'm being the journalist now, making sure that accuracy is paramount. All right. Okay. I want to, most importantly, stop and show you this brief video. I haven't given you everything, but it's okay. You're getting, I think, the main idea, and this video will really drive it home for you. And then we'll have a quick chat and we'll conclude, okay? I'm going to go to DC Connect. I loaded it for you here, and I'll go back to. Did I take this from YouTube? Oh, because I couldn't get into DC Connect. That's right. So let me do this for you, okay? And I will go to Joy of Stats. Okay, Hans Rosling. This is such a great insight into, sorry, that can help us see that there is progress taking place in the human story in spite of what. Okay, here we go. Let's bring this up. Excellent. Okay. So for all of you online now in the cosmos, please go to YouTube and grab a video called Joy of Stats by Hans Rosling. Or you can go to DC Connect and go to the class folder, class 13 folder. It's in there. And please watch that video now. And it will give you a good insight into something that I would like to end the course with. Okay? So did everyone get that? Just make sure. Shamim, let's see who's in the cosmos. It may be that they didn't hear me. Hi. Okay. Shamim, can you please just go to the DC Connect Class 13 folder and just let me know that you were able to access it? Because the video that I'd like you to watch is right there. Okay. So I'm going to start running it here. Just let me know in the live chat if you've found it. Okay. So take a look at this.
Visualization is right at the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space with a bit of technical assistance from the crew. So, here we go. First, an active for health. Life expectancy from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an active for wealth. Income per person. 400, 4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick. And up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa sub-Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. In 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy was below 40 in all countries. And only the UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? Industrial revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the rest. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. What a catastrophe! And now I speed up with the 1920s and the 1930s. And in spite of the Great Depression, Western countries forged on towards greater wealth and health. Japan is some under try to follow, but most countries stay down here. But after the tragedies of the Second World War, we stop a bit to look at the world in 1948. 1948 was a great year. The war was over. Sweden topped the medal table at the Winter Olympics, and I was born. But the difference between the countries of the world was wider than ever. The United States was in the front. Japan was catching up. Brazil was way behind. Iran was getting a little richer from oil, but still had short lives. And the Asian giants, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, they were still poor and sick down here. But look what is about to happen. Here we go again. In my lifetime, former colonies gained independence, and then finally they started to get healthier and healthier and healthier. And in the emerging economies. Some in Africa followed. Some Africans were stuck in civil war and others hit by HIV. And now we can see the role today in the most up-to-date statistics. Most people today live in the middle, but there are huge differences at the same time between the best of countries and the worst of countries. And there are also huge inequalities within countries. These bubbles show country average, but I can split them. Take China, I can split it into provinces. There goes Shanghai. It has the same wealth and health as Italy today. And there is the poor inland province Guizhou. It is like Pakistan. And if I split it further, the rural parts are like Ghana in Africa. And yet, despite the enormous disparities today, we have seen 200 years of remarkable progress. That huge historical gap between the West and the rest is now closing. We have become an entirely new converging world. And I see a clear trend into the future. With aid, trade, green technology, and peace, it's fully possible that everyone can make it to the healthy, wealthy corner. Well, what you just see in the last few minutes is a story of 200 countries shown over 200 years and beyond. It involves plotting of 120,000 numbers. What does it mean, huh?
Well, let's stop and just address this, and then we're going to conclude, okay? And I'll just come back to this. Hold on, just get a little bit of it. Okay, so we can.
And access to the most up-to-date statistics.
Okay, so there's Hans Rosling. His son, by the way, is continuing the work that he's been doing since he passed not too long ago. But in the early days of TED, he was a fixture on the TED Talks, you know, when TED was starting. So he's really someone who has developed a reputation internationally, and his institute in data gathering, data collection. And he's an academic, I think it's Sweden or Norway. So we have 5 minutes left, and I apologize, we haven't had the whole discussion I wanted, but this is so important that I give you this information and I give you the chance to think about hope and progress, but tempered by reality as well. So I'd like to ask all of you, just for the last 5 minutes or so, let's fill up the couch here, okay? So Roxalana, can you come in here, and Clarissa, could you come here, and let's see how we can fill up as best. And the others, if you can't come to the couches, just sit right behind so that everybody can see you, okay? So Prince, you want to come in as well? And Nuso as well, okay? Because we're going to pass the mic around a little bit, okay? And let's see. Do you want to at least sit around so we can see and the others can see the backs of you too? And that it's easy to pass the microphone around. And why don't we start for the moment? Kevin's got the microphone there. Okay, we'll start here and we'll go around a little bit, okay? And what I'd like to ask you is something about your future. I'd like to think that a history class can be something that can make you think about your own life. It's not just data and information. So I'm just going to ask a few of you, for whatever time we have. Certainly not everybody is going to be able to speak to this. Are you hopeful about, you know, your life? Or do you think that it's going to get bad? Really bad? And are you feeling like, you know, my future's looking pretty good? Roxalana, do you want to try answering that? Now, just and try to keep it in the frame of short history of the world. That you've sat here on Fridays for 13 weeks. Next week we're going to have some presentations. I think you're going to be giving one, right? And Olive is going to give one too. Yeah, and then we can see if anybody else wants to give a presentation too. But so
Honestly, I'm a little bit nervous. Um, the main reason I think I'm a little bit nervous is because of the United States right now. I thought we kind of dodged that bullet, but obviously we didn't. And I'm just kind of nervous because they are like the biggest superpower in the world right now. And just their relationship with another huge superpower in the world, Russia, right now.
yes, yes.
That really makes me nervous, frankly. But I mean, right now, Ukraine's holding them off. But we'll see. I mean, like, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and Putin wants power, and he wants the
Yeah.
world, and humans love their greed.
Is he a fool? Is he a fool? Is he a fool?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
um,
All right. Vladimir Putin is a fool, and I may not disagree with that. But
I don't
anyways,
know, he's got a lot of traits that we've seen in other world leaders, such as Hitler, Stalin,
Yep.
Mussolini.
certainly does.
So yeah, but I'm a little nervous, but I have the little lingering of hope.
Okay, great. And when you talk about him, are you talking also about all the people who support him? There's a lot of people who seem to like this kind of leadership, and that's what really.
Yeah,
It's not just the one person, because it seems like people are speaking out more, and people are more courageous and challenging corrupt tyrants and dictators. You know, we do see that around the world, but maybe not enough of that.
yeah. I think people just are really scared. I think right now to speak out about what they like believe in.
In Russia. In Russia.
Yeah.
In
Well,
Russia.
in
yeah.
Russia, I think it's a different kind of story because, frankly, I think a lot of the people living in Russia, they've grown up in this kind of political system that doesn't allow for democracy and doesn't allow for somebody to speak on what they want. I mean, like, somebody opposes Putin, they're
Yeah.
falling out of a window. Somebody opposes Putin, they're going into
Get acid
jail.
thrown in their face. They just suddenly get shot. Their car gets
Yeah.
run off the road. There have been all sorts of assassinations. Are
Exactly.
you aware? People just disappear there.
Yeah. Or like his biggest opposer, I think his name was Navalny or something like that.
Navalny.
Yeah,
Navalny. Yeah.
went in jail and then
Opposition
said-
figure, and then somehow he just died in a camp. You know,
Yeah.
but the acid in the face is an acid. But he's not the only one. I'm afraid. Okay, so that concerns you. That the idea of a tyrant
Mhm.
who gains power and then solidifies power. He may have that power, but he could also be a real fool in the way that he uses his weapons, and we will pay for that if he decides to use nuclear weapons at some point, which he's threatened to use.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, Roxanne. Kevin, and then we'll do a couple more, and then can we end like in five more minutes? Just we'll go to. If you have to go, it's okay. I understand. Okay, but let's just get a few more comments from students. Kevin, maybe Avi Rose and Kayla, and then we'll be done. Okay, go ahead.
So sorry, what's the prompt?
Well, are you feeling pretty good about Kevin Garland's future in this world as you think back to what we've been looking at this semester? And I've just touched on this story in a very introductory way, but you know, you happy to be alive and gonna have a good life?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to be alive.
Yeah, you're happy to be alive. Yeah.
I'm a mature student. I'm 33 years old. I went to university and dropped out. I went to college and finished it, but didn't work in that.
Yeah.
Didn't work in that industry. And now I'm excited and optimistic to work in this industry that I'm going to college for.
Oh, why are you
So,
optimistic?
Because I've already been through the darkness.
Oh, so you're wiser
I
as a
guess.
person, and but what about the leaders and the people around you, the governments and the others? Couldn't they be kind of not so intelligent, and they might make stupid, foolish decisions?
Yeah, but democracy wins out.
It will definitely win out. Ah. Well, guess what? He may not be wrong, because I have a wonderful line for you from one of our important philosophers and historians through this course, Alfred North Whitehead. He's the one who said the world dreams of things to come. And then, you know what he also said? There is a slow sunrise taking place in human civilization. It's very, very slow, but the sun is rising. But it's very slow. Wish it would be faster, but it's happening. And Hans Rosling kind of showed that. There's a little bit more going on here. And let me just say, for example, Nusso, where were you born? What country? Uh-huh. And how come you're over here? Why don't you stay there? You got the money. Did you come from a wealthy family? Average. Uh-huh. And you were able to travel over here and healthier, wealthier corner. Where are you from? You're from India, and you come from a wealthy family? No. How'd you get the money to come over here? You don't have to answer that. I think you get my point. Don't you? Healthier, wealthier, slowly but surely. Something's going on if he and geez, I could go around. Well, I've been calling this Olive. That's Olive, and not what was your other name?
Owen.
Owen. No problem. Huh. No problem. Isn't that a sign of something going on? Okay, Avery Rose. Freedom is a powerful thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd have to say that I'm a little nervous too,
Okay.
in full honesty.
Yeah.
I guess mostly because, I try to consider myself an optimistic person. Like I try to see the good in things, but I don't think this has been the intention
Yes.
of reporters and news broadcasters, but constantly I'm seeing negative news. Like I know we need to know what's going on, both the good and the bad, but it feels like a constant barragement of bad news being shoved down my throat. So it makes me scared that of what.
I don't blame you, but I would say to this, and then we'll conclude, okay? Because Caleb will have to wait to another time. Okay?
But I'm still optimistic, like with courses like this showing us the good, and even the stories I've heard from my relatives and other places. While I'm nervous, I'm still clinging to the hope and the optimism that things are going to get better. It may not be as fast as we'd like. It's still going.
And why do you cling? Something in you clings to something better. This is a human thing. We all cling to this, don't we? In us, we all cling to it, even though we may not fully understand it. I have a bit of interesting. Do you know what the Oxford University word of the year is? Rage bait. Is it possible that there's a lot of people out there in social media elsewhere who are profiting from making you angry? They're putting stuff out there to get you angry. They're baiting you. They're drawing you in by making the world look awful, terrible, and it's called rage bait. And Oxford University Press has called it the word of the year. Maybe you're being baited and you don't realize it. I'm going to end there. I want to thank you all for staying a little bit late, putting up with all the technical problems, and for sharing your thoughts the way you did about your own. You're the guys who matter the most. You know where to find me. Next week, presentations. See you here for Roxalana, Olive, and there may be others who want to present. I'm looking forward to those. Okay, and then the Cosmos. See you next week. Yep. Thank you, Prince. Read the assignment sheet. And then email, okay, and then email me, okay? If you have any questions, just email me, okay? Good. All right. No problem. If they're only you and Olive, you're going to have more time next weekend to really, and then to also have a discussion and get the students' comments on the index. Thanks, Kayla. It's good. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. Okay. Yes. That's okay, but to run, it might be best if you send it to me and I can run it on my computer for you. So I can just be here, and while you're giving it, I can manage that, okay? I'll support you. No problem. Okay, microphone. Yeah, thank you, Avery Rose. And
Professor, I have a
what's
question.
that? Oh, yeah, it's been posted for a week. Make sure you read the assignment sheet, okay? And then let me know if there are any questions, okay? Just email me and shoot me an email. Okay, great. Okay, so I want to shut down. Here,
Professor, I have a question.
and I'm going to do that by first doing this. I get the live chat. Okay, Shamim,
I have a question.
go ahead. I think I can hear you. Just a second. Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead, Shamim.
Like for the PowerPoint, like if I add the images, so do I have to add the like in-text citation or the references for that?
How are you doing your final assignment? Are you're doing it as the? I know we've
PPT.
been. Sorry, go ahead. Say that again.
PowerPoint.
Yes, in the PowerPoint. Are you going to present it to the class, or are you going to just submit it to the Dropbox?
Not sure, but maybe like
Okay.
yeah.
All right. If you submit it, then put the works cited in your final slide.
Okay.
Make a
All the
final slide.
images.
Okay. Do it that way.
Okay, images too, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
see the source for your images, as well as any other citations that you do for the critical information.
Okay,
But
sure.
the images are critical, because if you're going to be having a lot, I've had students when they do videos, they will put the citations for each of their images in the
Okay.
works cited. Okay, so what you do is I'd like you to take the, you don't necessarily have to take the link for the image, but the place where you got it, the name of the website where you got the
Okay.
image. Okay, that is what I'd like to see. Okay,
Okay, got it.
great. Thanks, Shamim.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, I'm done. I'm just gonna do that. Okay, and I've got mine here. Let me get this done. Stop the live stream.